Hello and good evening, and welcome to another edition of Facebook Live for the TCU Office of Admission. My name is Heath Einstein, and I have the great pleasure of serving TCU as Dean of Admission. And it is so wonderful to welcome all of you here today. We've got Carrie DeLuca from Garden City. Love my old Long Island friends. We've got Jalen from Maryland. We've got Alana from Illinois, and Catherine from down in Houston, and so many folks all over the country and all over the world who tune in to be able to learn more about TCU and our admission process and life on campus. And boy, there's a lot going on campus right now. You probably have heard we've got a football team, so that's taking up a lot of energy, but there's a lot more that's happening as well. We're winding down the fall semester. We have study days coming up. We've got finals right after that. It is a very, very busy time. We start all of our programs with a land acknowledgement. And just because you aren't physically on our space right now, doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge the space that we are in. So we respectfully acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. TCU especially acknowledges and pays respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose ancestral homeland our university is located. And the next time you're on campus, I would strongly encourage you to check out the monument that is between Reed Hall and Jarvis Hall that acknowledges the Wichita and affiliated tribes and our sacred space. We have now been doing this. We were talking about this just before we went on air tonight. We've been doing this Facebook Live event for almost 2 years now. The entirety of 2022, and we started very early in 2021. So coming up in a couple of months, we'll have our 2-year anniversary, which is very exciting. And we've done programs on an array of topics, and you may have been with us for some of those. They include scholarship and financial aid. We've learned about the John V. Roach Honors College. Last month, we learned about the College of Fine Arts. We've talked about how housing works and intercollegiate athletics and everything in between. And so we hope that you get a lot out of these events. If you have joined us in the past, you know that they are unscripted. So we're going to have some talk for you about our topic, but then it's going to be sort of open-ended, and we want to hear from you. So if you haven't done so already, please throw your questions into the chat. We are going to get to as many of them as we can. We have up to an hour, and if it takes that entire time, we'll use it. If it takes less time, that's fine too. So we are here to be of service to you. The topic this evening is the core curriculum. If we veer into other aspects of admission, that's okay too. But we're going to try to definitely get a good chunk of our time spent on the core because it touches every single student at Texas Christian University. A few thank yous before we begin. Joining us behind the scenes, folks that you don't see, Rob Berline from our alumni office, as well as Jenny Moore from the Office of Admission. They are here to make sure that things stay on track. Okay, before we get into the topic of the core curriculum, I do want to mention one thing about admissions because we ask people questions or ask people to send us questions in advance via our social media channels. And one question that came up repeatedly is, when are those early action decisions going to come out from the Office of Admission? Well, glad you asked that question. We just released early decision last Friday, and we have been spending the bulk of the last month and a half reading applications. In fact, just before I put my headset on today, I was reading applications. After I take these off in about 54 minutes, I'm going to go back to reading applications. I might get dinner in there somewhere. So we are in the thick of it. If everything goes according to plan and the train stays on the track, then we plan to have our decisions out late next week, Thursday or Friday of next week. So you can look for that if you're an early action applicant, and hopefully you get good news. We aren't able to admit everybody who applies to TCU, but we will be admitting a lot of students next week. All right, I would love to introduce my guest this evening, and she is the lovely Dr. Theresa Gaul, who is a professor in our Department of English, as well as the director of the core curriculum. Hello, Dr. Gaul, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Thanks for having me tonight.
It's so great to have you. And we've been partners in this for a long time. You're so dedicated to the core and are generous with your time in helping us out on Monday at TCU and lots of other programs that we do. So I'd love to just hear in your own words about the core curriculum and what just some opening thoughts that you might have.
Sure. Well, the TCU core curriculum is the set of course requirements that are required of every TCU student before they graduate. So we might think of it as a kind of common curriculum that all undergraduate students experience. And in the broader landscape of higher education, this kind of study in the college or university setting is called general education. And the goals of general education are really to prepare the students to be successful, both while they are in college as students and also in their life beyond college. And not only on a professional level, although that's very important, but also as an individual, as a person in a society, as a citizen in a democracy. So the goals for general education for our TCU core curriculum are very high. And at TCU, they really stem from our mission statement to help students learn to think and act responsibly and ethically as leaders in a global community, and also from the tradition of the liberal arts. Now, liberal arts education is an ancient concept. It originated in the classical period in Greece and Rome. It continued up through the Enlightenment. And the word liberal in this context specifically gets at the notion of freedom. So what does it mean to be a citizen in a free society? And how does learning or education provide the keys to that freedom? So this is an old concept, and it still structures higher education in our own curriculum today. And the courses that are part of the TCU core curriculum are imparting the forms of knowledge and also the essential skills that we feel it's really vital and actually imperative that every TCU student attains before they graduate. So we ask ourselves the big question: what should a TCU graduate know and be able to do? And this curriculum ensures that we're meeting what we call those student learning outcomes. The goals of general education are to help students be ready to tackle the problems that they're going to confront in the real world once they leave a college or university setting, to have the skills and the knowledge and the ability to bring multiple perspectives and points of view to bear on those problems, to be able to use discipline-specific knowledge and skills that they might gain in their major and put those in combination with a broader skill set that they encounter in their core curriculum courses to develop solutions to these questions. We also hope to create students who are lifelong learners. We all know that the world will change for college graduates. Their futures are something we can't even really predict or imagine right now. They will probably work in fields that haven't even been developed. Many of them will experience career changes. And life has a way of throwing a lot at us personally and professionally. And students need to be flexible and adaptable and really versatile in being able to meet these challenges. So the courses they take as part of the core curriculum are developing this broader set of skills and forms of knowledge to prepare them to be able to handle those changes, no matter what they are. And so this is where the idea of lifelong learning comes about. When they're out of college, they no longer have that structure of the classroom and the syllabus and the professor. Will they be able to seek out what they need to know in order to confront those challenges that they face? And as I've already mentioned, a primary goal really does have to do with the idea of being a citizen in a strong democracy, being a contributor to the communities and society that surround one, being a leader in diverse and global contexts, being able to work with others in those contexts and in those communities. So we have very high aspirations for our graduates, and the core curriculum, in combination with the students' major and minor areas of study, helps prepare them for that future.
That's really, really good information, Dr. Gall. And as you were talking about the um, the variety of outcomes for students and those outcomes that we don't even know exist, it reminds me of something that I talk about at our Monday at TCU program. So for those of you watching, if you've been to Monday at TCU, forgive me, you've heard me say this before, but I think it's a really good example. Um, about 8 or 9 years ago, there was a commercial during the Super Bowl for BMW. And in the commercial, they take you to the set of the Today Show in 1994. And Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric are sitting there talking to each other and saying, what does this at sign mean? What is WWW? And of course, you and I were alive then and fully remember what the world was like before the internet age. But for students who are applying to TCU right now, that predates their existence. And the world is a drastically different place less than 30 years later. And so, as we prepare to send our students out into the world, what is this place going to look like 30 years from now?
Mhm.
It's almost impossible to fathom if you think about how things are speeding up. Even things are moving at an even greater rate. Um, so I think that's really the key to the core. I tell students, we're not preparing you for your first job out of college. We're preparing you for all of your jobs out of college. That's kind of the idea, right? Um, so I'm wondering maybe if you could walk us through what the core actually looks like. If we break it down a little bit. I think we've got some graphics that we might be able to
Yeah,
share.
absolutely. And just in response to what you were saying again about this changing future that students today will be confronting, we might think about the core curriculum as providing a breadth of learning
Mm,
and think of it in working in companionship with majors that offer that depth of learning and specialization in a field. And it's the combination of the breadth and the depth of learning that creates that full university education. So I know that often when parents and students are in this admissions process, they're thinking a lot about a major. What will I major in? Is it a good school for my major? Those are really important questions. But it's also important to think about that broader range of courses that every university or college that's accredited will require of you. It's something that's mandated by our accrediting agencies, and the quality of that education and how that will equip you for your future. And we know that employers really value these skills as well. The AACU, that's the American Association of Colleges and Universities, did a really vast survey of employers. And they found that 9 in 10 employers really look for these broad areas of learning that characterize a traditional liberal arts education when they're hiring recent graduates. They rate these skills as very important in the students that they're hiring. These are skills like communication, ability to use and interpret data, a well-rounded education, the ability to employ multiple perspectives to solve a problem, to work in a team, to work with people who are different than you, to read and comprehend, and then apply knowledge to problems in the world today. To think about questions from a global perspective, and so on and so forth. These are old and valued traditions in education. They continue to be hugely important and important in shaping the future. And again, they work together with major and minor fields of studies to really create that whole package as students enter the workforce. Now, in terms of our specifics here at TCU, we've identified 4 really significant learning outcomes that structure our core curriculum. We consider these to be the most crucial student learning outcomes, the ones that really help us fulfill this mission statement we have and prepare our students for their future success. And those 4 student learning outcomes are in these areas. One is in critical thinking. And in particular, there we emphasize some of the traditional areas of liberal arts studies, like the humanities, the social sciences, the fine arts. And we challenge students to analyze the importance of human experiences, human cultural expressions, and also creativity, to understand themselves, as humans in the world, and to seek to understand the perspectives of other humans in the world around them. We also value communication, and this goes across both written and oral modes. Quantitative and scientific reasoning, as well as responsible citizenship. And this area is what maps up most closely to our TCU mission statement. We really, really believe that students need to think about their own duties and responsibilities in the world, and also to think about how they can contribute positively to their societies, to their communities, and to the broader, very diverse and global world that we inhabit today. So when we take these four outcomes together, um, we really distill the essence of what we hope for the core curriculum, and we assess regularly whether students are meeting these outcomes. Now, the way that they meet these outcomes is through fulfilling particular course requirements. Our core is organized into three areas. The first is called Heritage, Mission, Vision, and Values. And this is an area that both directs students to really examine the traditions that inform us at TCU, and also to think about how to put our mission statement and our values into work, into sort of existence, and into contribution in the world around us. So this area, for example, requires courses in religious traditions, literary traditions, and historical traditions. And I do want to add that our religious traditions offerings in the core curriculum are quite diverse. A student may be as likely to take a course, for example, in Hinduism, in Islam, in Latina feminisms, as in Christian or Bible traditions. And it also includes areas called cultural awareness, global awareness, and citizenship and social values. And so those areas compel students to really think about their place in the world around them, among and inhabiting this place with people with different kinds of viewpoints and experiences, but understanding how they can create action. The second area is called human experiences and endeavors. The course requirements in this area align with that traditional liberal arts focus. So students are required to take credit hours in humanities, in social sciences, in fine arts, and also in the natural sciences. And the third area is called essential competencies. This is really a skill-based area of the core curriculum. And the courses in this area focus on the skills we think students really need to have to complement the knowledge they've learned in the other areas. So these skills are communications, again, both oral communications and written communications, as well as mathematics. And we are in the process of implementing a diversity, equity, and an inclusion requirement in this area. So when students fulfill their course requirements in these three areas, they then they have completed the core curriculum part of their experience. Although we don't require students to just do that right off the bat in their first or second years, we actually encourage them to take these courses throughout their 4 years,
Hmm.
because as they learn and grow and develop as students, they take new and different things away from the courses. And so it really builds and develops and enriches their experiences. And in addition, it can be a nice way to balance out your workload, your course load, when you're very, very immersed in your major in your junior and senior years.
Right, and it allows students to still sample the courses in the areas that they think they want to major in, without fully committing, and they're taking core classes at the same time that will carry with them no matter what they end up majoring in. So it's
Yeah, that's a super important point. The core can really be used in a few different ways strategically by students. And I really encourage students to think about this, to not think about a core curriculum as a checklist of requirements they have to get through, but instead to think about how these courses can help them define their path.
Mhm.
You can, for example, take a course in an area you think you might be interested in, but you're not quite sure. And that course can help you determine whether you want to pursue it or not. A course in the core curriculum could be something that you are just passionately interested in, even though it's not your major path. You still want to nurture that in yourself. A core course can allow you to do that. And I think also one thing students really need to be open to is that sometimes core courses can change your path, and that's okay. That's actually a really good thing. That means everything's working well
Right.
because if college or university study is defined by growth and development, we want that to happen for you as you move through your courses. So students will sometimes take a core course. They've never encountered the subject area before. They never had a course in high school. They didn't know this field existed. And suddenly they light up. And that can be an important moment in terms of helping a student identify maybe a minor, a second major, or in some cases, a change in major, which again is okay. It's not something that should cause anxiety. It should be something that's viewed really as a positive developmental step.
Yeah. I love the idea that you mentioned earlier of breadth and depth. So, for example, Harry asked, do we have a sports broadcasting program? And the answer is yes, we do. It's a major within our film, television, and digital media program. It's a pretty specialized area, but you're not going to leave TCU only having the depth of sports broadcasting. It will be that alongside the breadth of the core, which will enable Harry and others to develop those essential competencies and those critical thinking skills that will carry with them, whether they end up devoting their entire career to that or moving in any number of other directions. So I
Yes.
really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could add as an example. So, for a student with an interest in sports broadcasting, you can use the core curriculum requirements to support that interest and help develop that. So, for example, you'll be taking a course in oral communication in speech as part of the core. Well, obviously, that's going to be of real benefit for you in this pursuit of study. But did you know there's an English course on sports and literature that fulfills the literary traditions requirement? And you could take that course as part of the core curriculum and develop a kind of breadth and range of understanding of how sports have been manifested in a cultural mode throughout history. And that's just one example of the creative way you can use the core to support your interests. On the other hand, you could use the core to go in an entirely different direction that interests you, and that's another great use of it. So there's a lot of possibilities. I have a colleague, Dr. Muriel Cormacan, who is the Associate Dean of the Adirondack College of Liberal Arts, and she has a slogan, which is "Think Core, Think Explore." And I think in 4 words, that really, really epitomizes what our hopes are for the core. It's flexible, it's very adaptable. What you'll also find is that many courses will count in more than one area of the core, so it allows you to make good progress towards your goals while you're taking courses that you really need to take. And also, I'd add that often prerequisites for majors are also core curriculum courses. So, in other words, as a student is working to fulfill prerequisites to enter a major, they are also fulfilling core requirements. And as well, core courses also fulfill honors college requirements. So we've really created a system that dovetails to allow students to be able to define their areas of study and their course of study while meeting the necessary requirements across the board.
So sports and literature, that sounds fascinating. Uh, are staff able to audit classes? That sounds really good. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment because we have a tradition on our Facebook Lives that we do dad jokes. Okay,
Mm.
so here I'm going to give you the first dad joke of the evening. You're welcome to try to answer the question. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes not so much. So I'm going to put you on the spot, but feel free to pass. That's okay. Okay, so Dr. Gall, how does NASA organize a party? How does NASA organize a party?
I pass.
Okay, they plan it. See? They plan it. Okay, you like that one. I know.
Well, see, I
Okay.
like it because it's bringing together study of space, whether
Yes.
it's a geology course, with wordplay, which is the
That's
realm of English, as
right.
well as social interactions, which gets at the teamwork aspect of college. So I'm all
Yeah.
in favor of this, Heath.
Oh, good. I like it. So that dad joke basically provide us with some essential competencies
That's
that
right.
one we could do a whole course in dad jokes. I love this. Okay, adding it to the core. All right, I want to get to a question that was sent to us actually via social media by Nora Blomberg, who I had the great pleasure of meeting in Sacramento just a couple of months ago. Hi, Nora. What is the number one tip you have for students when choosing classes? I think this is a wonderful question to ask a faculty member who's been doing this for quite a while. So, what is a tip that you give students in selecting courses?
Yeah. Well, I think flexibility would be the tip. I think look at the requirements that need to be fulfilled. And TCU makes this extremely easy for you. We have an academic portal, and in any day of the week, you can check your progress in the core curriculum. When you see what you need to still fulfill, you can then take a look through our class search, which again is very easy to use, and you can actually designate the core areas that you need requirements in and see what's offered in that semester. From there, I think the students should be thinking about, as I've already mentioned, either exploring new areas, following up on interests that they are curious about, or creating a path that really supports and supplements their identified course of study. Any of those are fine strategies. Look at what's offered and see then what starts coming together. But and here's the tip, it would be have a plan A and a plan B and a
Hmm.
plan C. And the great thing is because there are many requirements in the core, especially as you're starting out your first year, that really almost no matter what course you choose, if it's in the core curriculum, it's going to be fulfilling an area that you need. And so your plan A, plan B, plan C are all equally good plans. If you don't get a course that you wanted to take the first time out, you can either switch plans, switch to another option because you've identified that flexible range of options for yourself. Or, if it's a course you really want to get, you can wait till another semester. Each semester, you gain additional seniority in terms of
Hmm.
registration. And so your chances go up of being able to get that course. So I wouldn't want anybody to give up on getting a course that they really want because it's full, which does sometimes happen. You can still pursue that. But if you do have this kind of flexible approach, knowing many choices are going to fulfill my needs and get me where I need to go, then that process of registering will be more positive for you.
That's great. Um, what about taking classes at like early hours or late hours? I mean, ho I think I think many students come to college assuming they're gonna be able to take all of their classes between 10 AM and 2 PM, right? And we know the reality is that, we would never be able to, educate everybody just between those hours. How bad is it to take an early morning class?
From a professor's point of view, I often find those classes to be really positive. They can be a little quiet, but often the students are very focused and sort of devoted. Like they can be really positive academic experiences in the classroom itself. Yes, I think the more flexibility you can bring to how you're thinking about your schedule in terms of hours and days, also the more range of choices open up
Mhm.
to you.
Yeah.
Some of the majors at TCU are more lockstep in that they have a real sequence of courses you need to take. Some of them are much more fluid and flexible. So, depending on your major as you enter, you may find yourself with a number of considerations that you do have to really keep your eye on, or you might have a lot of free play in your first and second year to really explore.
Sage asked this question: do you offer a business minor for students majoring in music? If so, how many credits would I need for it? I don't know if you know the answer to that, and I certainly don't know the specific number of credits. We do offer a business minor at TCU, and generally speaking, most, Dr. Gall mentioned 39 credit hours. That's about a third of the coursework at TCU. We have your major also typically is about a third of your coursework, and that would leave roughly a third for a student to pursue a minor, a second major, a couple of minors, or whatever the student would like to do. Some majors are more intense than others. They have more credit hours required than others. So it's a little bit more challenging to maybe, like it would be impossible to double major in nursing and dance, right? Those are they're just too many requirements to be able to do both of those things together. But to pick up a minor in business while you're majoring in music, I would imagine that wouldn't be an issue. Dr. Gall, you might correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, I'd also add, I believe there's a fine arts administration
Mm-hmm.
minor,
That's right.
and that might be along the lines of what the student is looking for as well. Yes, I agree with that. Many students, even in high credit hour majors, find themselves taking some electives before they graduate. And if you're strategic about thinking about the core and the courses you're choosing as part of the core and about your open elective hours, you can put together a minor even in some of those more challenging hour-wise
Yeah.
majors. And for students with majors that are on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of credit hours, it's very possible, very easy to do.
Can you talk?
Another
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
well, I was just going to mention another aspect of registration is sometimes families or students might ask about like the balance of courses in the first year, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Most of your courses in the first year will probably be core curriculum courses. You might have some prerequisites, or you might be able to start in on your major if you have a clear sense of that with one course a
Mm-hmm.
semester, for example. But you should expect in your first year that most of the courses will be core. In your second year, many of your courses may still be core with more major courses added in. And then you might find yourself in your senior year with just one or two courses, core courses, that you've kind of stuck in your back pocket. For example, if you have a really quantitative major, lots of problem solving, lots of quantitative sort of stuff, you might keep a humanities course reserved in your senior year just to give yourself a different kind of homework, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, because there are so many ways that courses count in multiple areas, usually you can bring this together pretty effectively as you're moving forward.
Well, you made a comment just a minute ago, which is a good segue to a question that Catherine asked, which is, can you give an example of what a freshman schedule with the core curriculum might look like? Like what is a just an yeah, like an example if
Sure,
you can come up
sure.
with one.
Yeah. Well, I think, and Heath, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think a pretty typical credit load for students is 15 hours.
That's right. Yeah,
The range is between 12 and 18 generally,
that would be considered full time, 12 to 18 credit hours, right?
right? But a pretty typical load would be 15. And so if we're thinking about 5 3-credit classes, then in the first semester, it might look something like Introduction to Composition, um, possibly a social science like Introduction to Sociology or Introduction to Anthropology, possibly a fine arts. There are some really popular classes in fine arts. One is called, for example, Rock to Bach. There's also a world dance course, a course about musical theater. And a student might be taking a science course with a lab to fulfill the natural sciences requirement, and possibly a math course. So then you see we have a one course math, one course science, and then 3 courses that are more humanities or fine arts balanced, which gives a nice
Hmm.
balance. Now, if you had a major course you wanted to start in there, honestly, chances are it might be a core course also. And so it would both count for the core and your presumed or possible major. And I do want to say also, if you end up changing majors, the wonderful thing about the core is usually those first courses in a major are core courses anyway. So if you change majors, you haven't lost anything. You haven't
Right.
wasted any time because those courses are still counting for you as part of the core.
Well, there's this concept of double dipping.
Hmm.
Can you explain what that means?
Yes, that's when one course counts in more than one area of the core. So, for example, say you take Intro to Criminal Justice. That course is a social science course, but it also counts for citizenship and social values. So, it is both in the human experiences and endeavors section of the core and the heritage, mission, vision, and values. It will fulfill two requirements in one course. There are many, many, many courses like this. You might, for example, take that world dance course I mentioned, and I believe that course also fulfills cultural awareness. So many of the most popular courses that students are taking in their first and second year are actually fulfilling or double dipping in more than one area of the core. There are also some triple dippers, and those are like the ones that really do it all. And where those come in have to do with what we have, which I think is pretty distinctive and unique to TCU. So I want to take a minute to talk about it. In our writing requirements in the core, we have two different kinds of requirements. The first requirements are called written communication, and those are introductory composition and intermediate composition. And that's writing to prepare you for all kinds of writing that you might encounter in your studies and in your future careers. It's a course that's about the teaching of writing as writing. But we also have a second set of requirements that are called writing emphasis courses. And these are courses that are at the upper level and usually in majors that teach the writing skills that are necessary for that particular field or major or profession. So they're much more specialized writing courses. And again, often you reach those as part of your progress toward the major. So all told, you take 4 courses that focus on writing in the core curriculum. We're really proud of that,
Mm.
and I think those upper level, field-specific kinds of courses are pretty unique to TCU, and so I wanna really recognize them. Um, and this is an example also of how many majors sequence with the core very seamlessly. I know, for example, the nursing major, which is a major that has a high number of prerequisites and credit hours and the clinicals on top of it, they have made sure to build in 3, actually 4 courses that meet core curriculum requirements in their major. Those are cultural awareness, global awareness, and these upper level writing courses. So any nursing student who is simply fulfilling the requirements in the major will also be fulfilling the core curriculum. And that's how we make this work. And that's the wonderful thing about how different parts of TCU will work together to make sure that students have a very successful experience.
Well, you answered a question that was asked, and you maybe didn't even realize it because Sean had asked, how much emphasis does the core curriculum place on writing skills? And
Yes.
so you just perfectly responded to that question. Um, so now let's get to Jill's question. Can a transfer class or a dual credit class that a student took during high school fill in for one of these core curriculum classes or only taken at TCU? And I would expand that to advanced placement
Mhm.
or international baccalaureate, any of those sort of college level courses that students are taking before they actually get to college.
Yes.
Can those count for the core?
Yes. Yes. They absolutely can. And if you go to the admissions website and search credit by exam, and I think yeah, there we are. We've brought up the website for you. You can take a deeper dive into this. So the answer is yes. You can transfer in credits that will count for the core curriculum. And this can happen either by exam or by transfer credit. So exams would be AP, CLEP, International Baccalaureate. Transfer credit would be dual enrollment or other, courses that may have been taken at other institutions that will be brought in. And If those courses meet our outcomes, they will transfer in as counting for the core curriculum. And that is a process that's handled between admissions and the registrar's office. So when you apply, and again, Heath, correct me if I've any part of this wrong, you submit either your transcripts or your test scores. Based on what you submit as part of the admissions process, then admissions works to get that information to the registrar's office, and it magically appears on your transcript. And you can see this show up on the record of your progress towards the core curriculum. So sometimes students will come in already having met a number of different courses in the core curriculum through these means. Now, I do want to say, however, one caveat is that we do require the courses in global awareness, cultural awareness, and citizenship and social values to be taken at TCU. That's because those courses are the ones that most closely map up to our mission statement. And so we really want students to be in the classroom with TCU professors and other students discussing these really important areas. And also, these are interdisciplinary areas. They aren't anchored in any one department or college, but they go across the curriculum. And so it's very difficult to sort of articulate transfer credit on those courses. So those three areas do have to be taken at TCU. And also those upper level writing emphasis courses I was just telling you about that are in the majors,
Mhm.
those also need to be taken at TCU. But other than that, everything else can be transferred in.
You asked me. I'm not sure exactly what you said about the transcript or the test scores. Were you saying for admission one of those is required?
Um, you require students to submit those if they're looking for transfer credit or AP credit, for example. You have
Right.
that information as part of the admission
Correct. Sorry.
process.
Yes, that is right. Okay, so I have an interesting question. Well, it's partially my question, partially the question of Elizabeth Shaw, who says, "What study abroad programs do you offer, and how many students on campus participate?" I'm going to alter that. I'm going to answer it, but then I also want to alter it. So we have study abroad programs at TCU, what we call in programs. There are about a half dozen of them all over the world, largely in Europe. We've got one in South Africa, rather, but we will connect students to programs all over the world. So if there's a particular place you would like to go, as long as the US State Department says it's a safe place for you to be, we can help you find a program. And between full semester programs and summer programs or shorter programs, more than half of the students will do some abroad experience. Okay, here's my adjustment to that. How does study abroad work with the core?
Mhm.
Can a student take core classes while they're studying abroad?
Yes, they can. We think of those classes pretty much like we would think of any transfer course. So once you're a student at TCU, if you take a course at another institution, there's a process to make sure that those credit hours get transferred back. It usually involves having that course signed off on. In the department or area it falls within. And so we ask students who are studying abroad to do something similar. If they're studying in London and they're taking a number of, for example, history or literature courses, before they go, they meet with their advisor. They have the advisor look at those courses, sort of okay them and sign off on them. And then they can carry those core requirements. Keep in mind those same caveats about transfer credits do apply in terms of study abroad, but some of our in-house study abroad courses, that is study abroad, for example, in the summer, that's taught by TCU faculty, those do carry, because they're really internal TCU courses, those can carry global awareness, cultural awareness, and citizenship and social values. So there's a real possibility that while you're studying abroad, you will be able to fulfill a fair number of core requirements depending on the choices and what's available to you at the place that you're studying.
Well, you just mentioned advisors, and Anna asked us, how do advisors help students create and adjust their schedules to cater to their majors, fields of interest, and work the core in there at the same time?
Right, right. Well, when you come to TCU, you'll be assigned an advisor, and depending on the college you're in, based on your major, That advisor will either be a professional staff advisor, that is a person who advises full time, or a faculty member who also does advising. And in either case, you were encouraged, you're actually required to do that in your first year, and you're encouraged thereafter to meet with your advisor each semester before the time that you register for classes. That's really important to do because they'll help you review your requirements in the core, make sure you're on track, and help you sketch out both your progress to fulfilling all those requirements before you graduate, and also they can help you talk through and look at what are some of the courses that would be a really good idea for you to take given your interests, or how you want to approach those core courses. So yes, you do get advising help. It's an important step and one we all really recommend that you take advantage of.
Okay, we're going to take another pause here, our second and final dad joke of the evening. So take a deep breath, Dr. Gall. Are you ready for this?
So much pressure.
Okay. What vegetable needs a plumber? What vegetable needs a plumber?
Can you tell I'm just freezing up? I'm terrible at
No,
these.
that's okay. That's okay. I won't. You won't go on Jeopardy. That's all right. Of course, a leak needs a plumber.
Ah, very
Yeah,
nice.
I happen to be a big fan of leek soup. Okay, we're in the home stretch, so let's get down to it. Aaron asks, do you have any core classes that are unique to your university? I think you mentioned one before, and we might have a graphic that shows some of the really cool courses that are offered through the core curriculum. Here are some recent ones, and I don't know if there are any additional ones that you've thought of, or classes you've taught, or maybe one of these that you would love to highlight. But we've got some really cool stuff that we offer our students, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's hard to pin it down because they're across the university in every department. There are some courses that are predictable. You'd assume students would take as part of a core curriculum, Introduction to Psychology, for example. And then there are courses with titles like these that I think really force us to think outside the box and really speak to students' interests. We have a course in coding, for example, computer coding, that fulfills citizenship and social values. It really thinks about how digital environments and the work that we do within them are connected up with ideas of how we contribute positively to the society around us and the duties and obligations we have as citizens. So the combinations are really just endless. There are courses on pop culture. There are courses on, trends in music and entertainment that really speak to students today. And then for those, like me, for example, when I was a student who are just fascinated by the past, or by other cultures in the past, there are so many courses that are also incredibly creative in that vein. There's, for example, a course on Dracula in culture, so it would trace this back from ancient folklore to kind of the popular 19th century imagining of Dracula by Bram Stoker that became so well known, to more current pop culture kinds of versions of that appear on TV shows.
Mm.
So I think many faculty really view the core curriculum courses as a central part of their mission. As teachers, it's where they spend a lot of their teaching time, and they put a lot of energy and care into these courses. And they also understand that because students are required to take them, we almost have to do a little more of a sales job, or really take seriously the need to make these courses relevant for students. And that can take a lot of creative angles. I myself teach introductory level core courses. I enjoy them very much. I think having a whole mix of students in the classroom from majors across the university is really exciting. Um, and I do want to add that that's another benefit of our core curriculum that students identify. Students talk about how they really value being in the classroom with people who have different interests than them. If you think about a particular major, maybe attracting a similar type of person, then you can imagine if you only took courses in your major, you'd really only be surrounded by people who have the same interests or strengths that you do. But in your core courses, you're surrounded by students from all parts of the university, and many students will say that that's one of their favorite parts about the core
Mm.
course, that they get to interact with so many different points of view.
It's almost like an academic frog camp.
Yeah, yeah, and I love
Um,
seeing that in those classes. I love seeing the students connect and, kinda learn to understand each other as we discuss the material.
yeah. You mentioned how, some of these newer courses are catering to the interests of the modern student. Is it ever the case where a student will help a professor design a course or come up with an idea for a course, or is it really just the faculty who are dreaming of these classes
Mhm.
that they teach?
Well, I think that can happen in a couple ways. One is informally, like through what's happening in the classroom, students always are influencing what professors will do the next time around.
Hmm.
So, seeing student responses or hearing their conversations or their ideas or being asked, why aren't we studying this? Or maybe having a student point out a connection can bring then the professor's teaching of that course to a new dimension the next semester. So, to give an example, I often will teach a course. It's an introduction to literature course. It fulfills literary traditions, and it's called. I focus it on the Scarlet Letter as a kind of classic text. But then we read a number of writers since the 1850s who have revised that story.
Hmm.
And these are writers of color in US society, women writers, and also global writers, but all who look back to Nathaniel Hawthorne's story and retell it in some new way for their current moment. So I built in the last time I taught that course a day when they could bring in some kind of cultural product from their experiences that spoke to what we'd been studying in class all semester. And multiple students brought in, and played on the screen Taylor Swift videos.
Hmm.
And I myself did not know that much about how much she actually draws on the Scarlet Letter and some of this kind of imagery. But they were playing these on the screen, they were dancing in the aisles of the classroom. And I realized, like, next time I teach that course, I think I start with Taylor Swift and then I move back to the Scarlet Letter, and then that will help the students connect even more
Yeah.
profoundly to what we're studying. So that would be the informal route. A more formal route to students influencing perhaps courses and course design in the future is that we do across TCU have some opportunities for undergraduate research with faculty members, and also some as apprenticeships or work study positions in departments. And sometimes the work students will do as either part of these research projects or as their employment in these departments or colleges could lead them to present ideas around pedagogy. I, in my former life, was a director of women and gender studies. We had a capstone project, and often students would propose a kind of course they thought the curriculum needed, and there were some cases where those course proposals by the students as part of their capstone were then picked up by faculty members in a future semester and taught. So yes, that synergy is there.
So what I took away from your comments is you're not a Swiftie.
I think I'm too old to be a Swiftie, but it sounds like I probably should have been.
Well, her most recent album just dropped, so I mean,
Right? There's
you
still
can listen to it.
time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we have time for one question, maybe two more questions. Let's see. Shep asks, can it be challenging to pursue um, preferred core courses interests while also playing a sport? So can you talk about for prospective student athletes, is it more difficult, less difficult to work core classes in?
Well, I would say that the challenge may be your scheduling.
Mhm.
As I understand it, student athletes sometimes will have more demands on their time in terms of scheduled practice time, workout time, and so on. So they may have fewer choices in terms of time of day to take their courses. On the other hand, athletes register sooner. Am I right on that, Heath?
Um, I I
I believe
think
so.
so. I don't know 100%. I
I
believe there's
believe that
priority registration
athletes,
just because they have to be able to have that
right,
practice time available.
because they have those constraints.
Yeah.
Students in the honors college and athletes get some preference in registering. So that means at the time you register, there may be more courses open. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit of a six of one, half dozen of the other. I think
Right.
TCU works hard to support the athletes and be able to get the courses that they need.
Kevin asks, does TCU have a foreign language requirement within the core curriculum?
TCU does not have a foreign language requirement in the core curriculum. So that is, not every student at TCU is required to take a foreign language. However, there are majors and degrees that require foreign language study. So a good proportion of TCU students are required to take the core to take foreign languages, but not all students. And so that's why it's not technically part of the core curriculum. So what you need to do there is check your degree plan and look at those requirements. And this is another good reason to meet with your advisor, because your
Mhm.
advisor can help you understand what those requirements might be for your particular degree. Now, foreign language study is still valued as part of the core curriculum, especially in terms of the understanding it can bring to us of different cultural traditions and also global contexts. So you do sometimes find courses in the departments that offer foreign language study that count for the core curriculum. But they don't count for a foreign language requirement. They instead count for these other requirements. So a course, for example, in an upper level course in French might fulfill a cultural awareness kind of requirement.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a great way to end our time together. Dr. Gall, thank you so much for being with us and enlightening us on the core curriculum. This has been just a fantastic conversation. I have learned a ton, um, and I hope you all have learned a ton as well. If you have any questions for us, you can always reach out to the Office of Admission by emailing frogmail, frogmail, at tcu.edu. You can call our office at 817-257-7490. As a reminder to those who have applied to the university under our early action plan, you should be notified at some point late next week. And for everyone else, we continue to be grateful that you have made TCU part of your college search. And we wish you well. Have a great evening and go Frogs.
Thank you.